Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we're doing a deep dive into Travis Hunter of the Jacksonville Jaguars, selected second overall. He is a generational prospect, and that he's both a corner and a receiver. Now, in today's video, we're focusing on his receiving ability specifically. You're going to watch them all 22. We're going to go over his strengths and weaknesses, some moves that the team's made, his fit into the offense, and finally, what we can expect from him in fantasy, and more importantly, where we should be taking him in rookie drafts, as well as redraft. Watch to the end of this video, and you should have a pretty good idea what to expect from Travis Hunter of the Jaguars. All right, so the first thing we need to think about is the significant team draft capital associated with Travis Hunter, right? He was selected second overall after the Jaguars traded up from fifth to second in order to acquire him. They spent multiple first-round picks and other significant team draft capital as well in order to have the draft rights for him, right? So it's been reported that he's going to at first work as a receiver before growing into the cornerback position. Now, I expect that he's going to be both a receiver and a cornerback in his rookie season. I know a lot of people are really worried about his snap count. I have a couple of thoughts in regards to that. So first of all, I think that in a Liam Cohen offense, we've already seen as soon as this past season that two receivers can thrive, right? Being Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I really don't think that Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be the impediment that some people think for Travis Hunter, and that I think that they can both peacefully coexist in this offense. I think there's going to be more than enough passing volume for both of them. Now, another thing is, people have been saying that, his snaps might not be high enough on offense. I think he is going to have a high enough targets per route run to be able to overcome that. Now, all I really care about is the total volume. If he plays less snaps, but he's targeted at a very high rate, and he gets enough target volume overall to be one of the top target earners in the rookie class, then I really don't care that he's not playing 100% of the snaps on offense. But if we've learned anything, he can play a ton of snaps. Now, the NFL is a different animal than collegiate football, but I really think that this guy is so talented, and I'm going to get into why in a minute here, that I really don't think you guys should worry in any way, shape, or form about selecting him in your rookie drafts. And now I wanted to take a look at first-round wide receiver hit rates from 2020 through 2024. That's a 5-year sample size here. And so I broke it down not only by the order in which they were selected here, but I also tiered it out, right? So I have top 5 picks being MHJ and Chase, picks 6 through 12 being Jalen Waddle through JMO, and then picks 13 all the way through 32nd being Jerry Jeudy and up to Xavier Legette. But also, besides taking a look at the order with which they were selected and tiering it out, I wanted to take a look at the total amount of seasons played. I've clearly marked out whether they're a top 5, top 12, or top 32 pick. And then I also wanted to take a look at the percentage of seasons played as a top 12 wide receiver, a top 24 wide receiver, and a top 36 wide receiver. And then try to come to a conclusion as to which one of these guys are, or all of them potentially, are either busts, to be determined, hits, or true studs for us. Now, you may disagree with what constitutes being a bust, to be determined player, a hit, or a stud, but for the sake of this, I chose somebody who's played more than one season and has yet to be a top 36 wide receiver as a bust. Somebody that's played one season and hasn't yet been a top 36 wide receiver is to be determined. Somebody like Rome Odunze, right? He was JSN, so I really don't think that's fair to him. Then Ricky Pearsall, we know what happened to him, so I really don't think that's fair to him either. Now, Xavier Legette did play a lot of the season, but he did play through a wrist injury. We'll see if things turn around for him. Now, what constitutes being a hit? In my opinion, I just did one top 36 season. Now, the reason for that is, if you have somebody that's supposed to be a very good wide receiver, say Marvin Harrison Jr., right? And he just doesn't have quite the season that we want, but he still is a top 36 wide receiver. You can still probably sell Marvin Harrison for 2 firsts, potentially more than that. So it's not as if, the value just completely bottomed out with him. It isn't what it once was, where he was, beginning without even having played a game yet as a top 5 wide receiver. But, for the sake of that, right? And then a stud is somebody that has had at least 50% of all their seasons as a wide receiver 1, being a top 12 wide receiver. Now, when you take a look at the first tier of wide receivers, the top 5 picks, MHJ was a top 36 wide receiver, so he does constitute as being a hit according to me. Then you have Jamar Chase, who's just a certified stud. He's been a top 12 wide receiver, regardless as to whether he's played the entirety of any given season. It's incredible. He is that good. And so you have a 100% hit rate at the very least with these top 5 wide receiver picks, right? Now, you have Jalen Waddle all the way to Jamison Williams from picks 6 to 12. You have essentially all hits with the exception of Rome Odunze, who I think it is fair to wait at least one more season with him. And then Henry Ruggs, which I don't think he would have been necessarily a stud by any means, but there was the potential if he didn't have that car accident issue uh, that he potentially could have progressed into more of a valuable fantasy asset. But when we have these top 12 wide receivers, there is almost a guarantee that they give you at least one top 36 wide receiver season. Now, when you get from picks 13 down to 32, you definitely have a higher bust rate. You have players like John Dotson, Treylon Burks, Kadarius Toney, Rager, Quentin Johnston, and Rashad Bateman, for instance, right? But I found it interesting. From picks 6 through 12 in the past 5 seasons, the only guy that I would at least classify as a certified stud is Malik Neighbors. But when you get from picks 13 down to 32, you get players like CeeDee Lamb, JSN, who technically qualifies here. Justin Jefferson's obviously a stud. And Brian Thomas Jr., who just like Neighbors does classify as a stud according to this. And so obviously the higher the pick, generally the higher or the more safe the wide receiver, right? So you can pause it if you want to and kind of look at the individual percentages here. I'm not going to go into detail with everybody, but with these findings, there were 82 total seasons played among all these wide receiver seasons put together. 22% of all these seasons were them as being a wide receiver 1. 35% of all seasons were at least as a wide receiver 2, and 54% of all seasons were at least as a wide receiver 3. That's a relatively good, safe rate, in my opinion. Obviously, like I said earlier, the higher up you get in the draft, the more safe you're generally going to be. Now, 7 out of 28 of these wide receivers I would classify personally as a bust, so that's a 25% bust rate. That is 0 seasons as at least a wide receiver 3. So, you have a 75% chance, at least in the past 5 seasons, of getting somebody that at the very least, right, is going to give you at the very least one wide receiver 3 season. Now, 12 out of 28, that's 43%, had at least one season as a wide receiver 3. So at the very least, you should be able to sell some of these guys if they don't quite have the season that you like and you think that they might bust out. They probably should retain some value because usually they're not just going to completely bottom out. Now, 6 out of 28 of these guys, that's 21%, were studs. They have at least 50% of all seasons played as being a top 12 wide receiver. I mean, you have nearly a quarter of a chance in the first round of getting somebody that is a perennial, or at the very least, more than likely top 12 wide receiver. That's fantastic. And then there's 3 out of 28 that are to be determined with only one season played. Like I mentioned, players like Rome Odunze got JSN. Then you have players like Ricky Pearsall. He got struck by a fast-moving object. And then Xavier Legette did have the wrist injury, but we'll see what ends up looking like with him. But overall, Travis Hunter was selected 2nd overall. Now, there is a little bit of nuance to that because he also is a cornerback, and that for sure is part of the reason why he was selected this high. But I really do think that he would have been at the very least a top 12 pick regardless, and I think top 10 for sure. And I really think that he would still be vying with Ted McMillan in terms of the first wide receiver selected. And so now, in terms of wide receivers that go in his range, the MHJs, the Chases, they at the very least have given us a top 36 season. But even if you think he would be drafted a little bit lower, if you take a look at that next tier of wide receivers, they are almost at the very least hits for us in fantasy football. Now, as you watch some all 22 clips that I've cut up for you, I wanted to talk about some of the traits that he possesses and something that I think he does not have that once or if he's able to have is going to vault him up in terms of the talent that he displays on the field and the production that we can expect. First of all, he is incredibly intelligent. Now, a lot of these guys are intelligent, but he brings a certain level of craftiness that other wide receivers coming out just generally don't because he is both a cornerback and a wide receiver. So he knows all of the things to look for as a wide receiver in terms of the cornerback in front of him. He knows how to set him up correctly. He knows how to exploit drop depth and zone coverage. He knows all of the tips and tricks of being a cornerback and a wide receiver. That is going to help him at the NFL level. Now, he's also an insane athlete. I mean, his jumping ability is ridiculous for somebody his size. His speed, his acceleration, his ability to accelerate while changing directions is just ridiculous and maintain that speed. He also has fantastic ball skills. Not only does he have the hops, but he has the hands to come down with the football. And that shows up on offense and defense. Now, we're talking about offense specifically here, but you'll see him pluck balls out of the air that he has no reason being able to corral. He also has incredible yak ability. With the ball in his hands, he is very, very dangerous. You can use him in the screen game. You can use him on crossers, slants. It doesn't matter. Get him the ball in space and watch what happens. He is a threat to take the ball to the end zone from any place on the entirety of the field. Now, what does he currently lack that I think, if or when he progresses in, is going to make him a much better player than he already is? That is route running. He is a little bit raw. He does have a little bit of wasted movement. He just isn't quite as efficient in and out of his breaks as he potentially could be. But because of his, first of all, just intelligence and knowing how to set corners up, knowing what they're looking for, knowing how to bait them, he also is the insane athlete that can jump very, very high, has great hands, can accelerate and keep his momentum and speed while changing directions. That is going to help him massively in terms of the potential for him as a route runner. Once he eliminates some of this wasted movement, there is no telling how good he's going to be as a wide receiver. I'm telling you right now, if you pass on this guy and you need a wide receiver, first of all, and I just think you are going to regret it for a long time. I understand that there is a lot of concern with him playing cornerback too much and not playing wide receiver enough. I think he is so talented that I think he can offset any potential limitations with total snaps played on offense by being just ridiculous with his targets. And like I've said earlier, in a Cohen offense, it's not like there can only be one wide receiver that eats. Two wide receivers can eat. I'll get into where he is in the pecking order and why I'm not concerned in the least either. But I hope all these things and what you saw in the All-22 film help give you an idea of what we might be able to expect with Travis Hunter in the future and what we're already getting now. Moving on to the offense in Jacksonville, it's going to be under Liam Cohen. He is an offensive-minded play-calling head coach. This is the max upside that you can have for your fantasy players, an offensive-minded head coach, because not only is there going to be continuity in terms of the scheming and the play calling, they're not going to leave for a better job. They're already a head coach, right? And so if Liam Cohen hits, which I'm personally making the bet that he does, that is the highest amount of upside that you could possibly ask for at the head coaching position and just for your offense in general. Now, I took a look at Jacksonville specifically, their pass block rating from this past season. They were 21st overall. That isn't particularly good. We'll go into some potential moves that they made to address that later. But moving on to Tampa Bay, because Liam Cohen was the OC for the Bucs last season. The Bucs had 250.4 yards per game in terms of their passing yards, which is good for third in the NFL. That's right. This is a high volume passing offense that he's bringing to Jacksonville. This isn't Arthur Smith, right? There is going to be plenty of volume available for multiple players in this offense. Their pass attempts, they had the 12th most. That's above league average. Perfect. Their pass rate, 55.9% was 20th. That's not the best. So that could you could hope to improve on that. Their team passing touchdowns, though, 41 this past season. That was tied for second in the entire NFL. And their expected points added, or EPA per pass, of plus 0.12 was good for fourth highest in the NFL. This is going to be an efficient offense that he's bringing, and I really think he's not only going to get the most out of Travis Hunter, but I think he's going to get the most out of basically everyone in this offense. Now, what did they do in free agency? Well, admittedly, they didn't do much of anything in free agency to address their offensive line issues. But I think that one thing that I do like about their free agency is that they did get Dyami Brown. He is going to bring a vertical presence to this offense that is going to allow, and he can take the top off, that's going to allow both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter to feast underneath, or potentially win deep themselves. Because one thing about Liam Cohen is he's going to move his guys around. He's not going to keep them stationary to allow them to get, taken out of a game. He's actually smart. So while this isn't, and actually this is one of the best signings in my opinion, because first of all, he's a deep threat that can take the useless snaps away and the useless routes away that aren't going to be productive as much for fantasy for us, while also not being that great himself as a wide receiver compared to Travis Hunter, at least what I think he's going to be, and certainly Brian Thomas Jr. This is going to allow them to feast all over the field. Now, let's take a look at their offense, their depth chart, right? Trevor Lawrence is their QB1. Now, I know a lot of people just think that he's the worst quarterback that's ever existed. I really think the reason for this is because the expectations were so high that anything below that is just so massively disappointing that there's just going to be a negative connotation on players, right? Like that, right? I think he's been fine. I think he's an above average quarterback to potentially a very good quarterback at his peak. He's just been inconsistent. Now, to be fair to him, think about the coaching he's had. In his rookie season, he had Urban Meyer. This guy was busy getting lap dances rather than coaching his team. Right. Then, second of all, he had Doug Peterson, who was an upgrade. That's true. But he also, I think the NFL has passed him by, if you will. Really, and just Press Taylor as his offensive coordinator, yuck. You want to talk about a lack of creativity? And then beyond that, his line has been terrible his entire career. And until this past season, he'd never even had a wide receiver one. his best wide receiver was a wide receiver 2 in Christian Kirk, who's fine, but that isn't. He should have had a better wide receiver by year 3 than Christian Kirk. Now, he did have Evan Ingram at tight end. Evan Ingram's a good yak guy. I wouldn't say an elite tight end, but a good tight end. But really, the players around him, the playmakers, just were lacking. Travis Etienne's fine as well, but the scheming was so poor, and the offensive line play was also so poor, specifically their guard and center play at times, that there was no running room. And so it's hard to have an effective offense when you have poor coaching. Your line can't block for your running backs. There's just no creativity. It's stale. And so I really think he's going to take a massive leap with Liam Cohen. Now we have our 3 running backs. You have Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, and Bashal Tootin, who I think are going to comprise the running backs that really see the field this season. I think that Travis Etienne is a candidate to be traded potentially. He was selected 2 regimes ago. He's had one really good season in terms of the touchdown production. He's had one season being his second season, his first season back from injury, where he was very efficient. But he didn't have necessarily the best fantasy season for us. But this past season, he did not look the same. He played through injury. Maybe he bounces back, maybe not. Tank Bigsby had one of the worst rookie seasons I can remember for a running back. Essentially, anytime he tried to catch the ball, he dropped it or fumbled quite a bit too. But then when he was given volume this past season, he looked very good on the ground. He's just never going to be that type of receiver. He's either going to get you a 20-yard gain or just drop the ball. So take that for what you will. And then Bashal Tootin was selected at the top of the 4th round. I really like this pick. He is going to be very good in the wide zone for them. And I think Liam Cohen is going to have his players on the field with specific plays, being the running backs especially, that are set up for success with them. I think that he's going to be used in the outside zone more often. I think Bigsby is going to get more of your gap runs and inside zone. So I really like the running back room this time. Now, Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud wide receiver 1. His 1,300 total yards and 10 touchdowns, there have only been 3 other wide receivers to have done that before. Players such as Jamar Chase, Randy Moss, I forget who the other one is, but he's an elite company. He's probably not just going to overtake Brian Thomas Jr. Liam Cohen's already said in the offseason, now this was prior to drafting Hunter, that the offense will run through Brian Thomas. Now, I'm not really worried about that because I think he does deserve to be the wide receiver 1, and I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I think he will see the most total target volume. But if you take a look at the wide receivers besides that, you have De'Ami Brown, who's just a deep threat. Gabe Davis actually was just cut as I'm recording this video. Parker Washington's nothing to be scared of. All the guys below that, who cares, right? So Travis Hunter is by far and away the second best wide receiver, not even close. Now, you have Brenton Strange. They let go of Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk, by the way, this offseason. Brenton Strange, I think, is serviceable. I think he's fine. I don't think he's a stud. And I really don't see any way that Travis Hunter is anything less than the wide receiver 2 in this offense. And like I mentioned earlier, we've already seen that in a Liam Cohen offense, as soon as this past season, that 2 wide receivers can thrive and be top-tier fantasy assets for us. Now, taking a look at their offensive line, Walker Little, Ezra Cleveland, Hainsey, McCarry, and Harrison, you could definitely do better, but I think, once again, the scheming is going to help massively here, and I think he's going to work to everyone's strengths to help make this offense more explosive and cohesive and just consistent as well. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Shack, and Infamy MTG. If you would like to become a Patreon member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. There we're going to have weekly live streams where we go over, fantasy news, potential buy low candidates, sell high candidates, depending on the news. We're going to give you specific league-oriented roster construction with trade advice based on your specific league settings there. We're going to give you access to early videos. We're going to give you the ability to suggest videos as well. I made a private video for someone on Isaac Rendo, some of the pluses, minuses to his game, things to like, and specific price points to sell or buy for. You're also going to find that we are working on a model with predictive capability for running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, and wide receivers based on a variety of specific metrics, minimums and maximums to be in an acceptable range for us in fantasy that will be predictive and lead us to being able to be more successful, we think, than the average person in determining which prospects based on these thresholds are likely to hit or unlikely to hit. And we're also going to be updating that each and every single year with the new prospects so that we can continuously have the best model possible. So once again, if you'd like to become a member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. Thanks. Now, let's move on to his fit with Jacksonville specifically. Moving on from Colorado to Jacksonville, it's obviously going to be more difficult at the NFL level. Now, where do we think he can play in the offense? I think he has absolute positional versatility. Personally, I think he can be an X on the line of scrimmage. I think he can be in the slot. I think he can be a Z off line of scrimmage. I think you can put him in motion for sure. Goodness gracious. Give him a head of steam with no press coverage. Yes, please. But taking a look at his positional versatility, you might have noticed that, I'm a little bit down on the boundary wide receivers compared to most people. Now, there's a reason for it. Now, it's not really just something that I just don't like these guys or anything. There is data behind it. I looked from 2015 through 2024 at all kinds of data, specifically alignment of wide receivers where they're playing and fantasy success for us. Boundary wide receivers are by far and away the lowest hit rate with the lowest ceiling of any wide receiver type by far. So you might have noticed that, in 2024, he had 509 boundary snaps at 94.4% and 30 slot snaps at 5.6%. And you might be saying, well, then why do you like this guy? Well, he also had over 700 yards as a true sophomore while playing 64.3% of his snaps in the slot and 35.4% of his snaps out wide. So he's had success both in the slot and out wide. I really have no qualms about his positional versatility. I think he's going to be dynamic no matter where he is in the offense, and I really think he is going to thrive under Liam Cohen. Now let's take a look at some advanced stats for Travis Hunter from this past season, right? I took a look at draft-eligible FBS wide receivers with at least 75 targets. It was a sample size of 77 players here. Travis Hunter ran 502 routes, which is 93.1% of his team's routes, which is just incredible when you think about he was a full-time defensive player also. Taking a look at this past season, like I mentioned earlier, he only played 5.6% of his snaps from the slot and 94.4% out wide, but he had over 60% of slot snaps the year before, as opposed to about 36% in out wide this past or in 2023 rather. Now, taking a look at his yards per out run, his 2.51 or tied for 21st in the sample size. That's great. That's not elite, but still plenty good. His PFF receiving grade of 89.0 was 5th in the sample size. Fantastic elite numbers. I do agree I think he's potentially better than that, but still, I do agree that he was very, very good this year as a receiver in basically every aspect. His yak per reception, his 4.9 yards, are tied for 48th. Some of that is due to usage, but he isn't necessarily the best yak receiver among this class, but still very good, and I think better than 48th. Now, what shows you this is his missed tackles forced. His 34 were first in the sample size. That is how good he is at making people miss. He has the ability to snap down on those hitches, juke people out left and right. He has a great feel for space. His spatial awareness is amazing. Taking a look at his contested catch percentage, it's also incredible. Like I mentioned earlier with those ball skills, and he comes down with these passes that he just should not be able to. His 64.7% is astronomically good. Now, we typically like a profile with 50+%, so he's up at 65 just about, 11 out of 17 this past season. Now, taking a look at his targets and targets per game, his 121 at 8.1 per game are very, very good. His receptions and receptions per game of 96 and 6.4 per game are also amazing. His 1,258 yards are great at 83.9 per game. And he had 15 total touchdowns, which he played 15 games. So that is an average of 1 touchdown per game. This is very, very good production. And it's really all the more impressive when you think about he hasn't really been just strictly focused at the wide receiver position. He's had to stretch himself to be able to be a very good wide receiver prospect and a cornerback prospect. the Jaguars are mentioning that they're specifically starting him on offense to begin the season, at the very least with the offseason, in order to help him ramp up his ability on offense, which is great for us fantasy players. Now, to conclude with Travis Hunter, he's 6 foot, 188 pounds officially. That's a good size. It's not great and it's not elite, but he isn't Tank Dell, right? He's not Tez Johnson. Now, his NFL draft capital is elite. He's a top 5 pick, 2nd overall. Now, once again, like I mentioned earlier, some of that is because he's a cornerback and a wide receiver. I'm telling you right now, he would have been a top 10 pick as a wide receiver. He is that good as a wide receiver. My comp for him is Garrett Wilson, but he's just a better athlete, in my opinion, than Garrett Wilson, which says a lot because Garrett Wilson is a supreme athlete. He's much like Garrett Wilson too. Another reason for the comp was Garrett Wilson, remember, he was just an athlete out there playing football. He wasn't really the technically sound wide receiver that he's starting to grow into at the NFL level. He was just out athleting people at the collegiate level. And that's what Travis Hunter was doing, which is just incredible when you think of how much more room for growth he has. Now, my official grade was a 91 out of 100. Now, I've gotten some comments that are saying you're grading him as an elite prospect. In terms of with the fantasy slanted grading model that I use, yes, he is a supreme athlete who is good after the catch. That is a lot of what my grading model looks into. It also does have some route running nuance to it, his release packages, which are pretty good too, as well as some production and other things such as his catch and traffic ability, which is great as well. He basically scored incredible all across the board. And in the past 2 classes, he is the 2nd highest graded wide receiver I have with this fantasy football slanted grading method. He is above Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, this is for fantasy football. He grades just once again half a point under Malik Neighbors, but it's just because he is such a ludicrous prospect with the hands, the production, everything you really want besides maybe elite size. I think he is going to be fantastic. Once again, I think that this offense can support 2 wide receivers. I think Travis Hunter being selected this high, they're going, and with them trading up and trading future draft capital, they're going to want this guy to produce. They're not going to draft this guy to give him 2 targets a game. I really don't know what people are worried about. You think that they have Brian Thomas, right? You think that they're just going to give Brenton Strange 15 targets a game and then just Travis Hunter gets 1 to 5 maybe? No, he's going to get target volume. He's going to make up for any potential snaps lost on offense with a high targets per route run rate. All I care about is the total volume, not the total snaps. Now, where do I think he should be going in Superflex rookie drafts, your dynasty drafts, right? I think anywhere from potentially 102 to 105 at the very, very latest, depending on team need. I think Omari Hampton is a very safe pick, and I definitely understand. And I have taken him 2nd overall in a fantasy draft too. But yeah, I think in that pick 2 through 5 range, I definitely wouldn't take him above Ashton Genty, unless maybe you're in an IDP league where you can slot him out and you have a specific cornerback designated slot, because then you could get cornerback stats and wide receiver stats in that cornerback slot. But otherwise, I really don't think I would be taking him over Ashton Genty. In 1 QB leagues, I think the same applies. Really, picks 1 to 4 probably, because you wouldn't have Cam Ward in the equation in a 1 QB. Now, in terms of redraft, I think it could just vary. Just depends, right? It's really hard to say, to be honest with you. It'll be interesting to see where the ADP equals out to in a couple months, right before a redraft really starts for us. But this guy is going to be an insane NFL player, and he has so much room to grow because he is just a supreme athlete that hasn't even really figured out the polish of the wide receiver position. He's set up for success with, in my opinion, an above average quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who finally has a good offensive-minded head coach there for the long haul. They spent significant draft capital with Travis Hunter, and although he does have to vie with Brian Thomas Jr. for targets, I think both can coexist in this offense. And I think with Travis Hunter, he has the upside to be a top 12 wide receiver if everything hits. But I do think, though, that he's probably going to be more in that wide receiver 2 range generally, because it is pretty unlikely that you have both of these guys as consistent top 12 options, I'll be honest. But man, this guy is so talented, and if you pass on this guy, I think you're going to regret that for a long time. Once again, feel free to check out my Patreon. I'd really appreciate your support. Feel free to like and subscribe. I really appreciate that as well. Thank you, and have a good day.